comes to our own personal productivity as a manager, we face daily challenges from all directions, and it can be easy to fall into the trap of equating busyness and long hours with productivity. The sad truth is that if you're working long hours and skipping lunch or eating al desco and constantly busy, then you may be succumbing to these pressures. And this means you're probably being less effective than you could be. Obviously, and that's not sustainable. Imagine you're riding a motorcycle travelling along a road, and imagine that laid out along that road you've got various markers, not speed limits or road signs, but goals that you've set out heading towards a vision or big goal for the quarter or the year, and perhaps your KPIs are laid out along there as well. Now, a motorcycle, as we know, has two wheels, and each performs a specific function. So the front wheel, for example, obviously is what steers the bike, and that's setting the direction that we'll travel. So the rear wheel, of course, provides the drive or forward motion. So first up, of course, we have to set the direction we want to go before we decide what to do to get there. So having an end destination and focus is critical. There's no point in having lots of drive and speed if you end up off track. So the clearer your goals laid out on that road, the easier it will be to maintain your attention on what's important and not be sidetracked by other people's demands or bright shiny things. Now, assuming we're pointed in the right direction and know what our measures of success are as a manager, let's take our attention to the rear wheel where the rubber hits the road. Now, we can probably all remember the basic physics of leverage and momentum as it applies to turning a wheel. Where do we get the most leverage in order to make the wheel spin? Near the axle or the outer rim? Well, of course the outer rim gives us much more movement when applying the same force compared to near the centre. So how does this apply to your activities at work? Let's examine how your various activities might map out on this wheel from least to most leverage to get that movement or rotation. Now, of course, each person is different, so you'll have slightly different priorities, but this is a guide only. So starting at the axle area, or level 1, we have minimal effect on the wheel, of course, and this is where we might spend time on things that don't require much brain power or more routine or mundane tasks like checking your LinkedIn profile or perfecting that budget report. Now there's a case of diminishing returns if ever there was one, if you're familiar with the high C in the disk profile. So, level 1 activities. So things like perfecting stuff, obviously, silly emails, messages, jokes, that kind of stuff that does the rounds very often, Facebooking, interrupting other people can be one of these activity areas. Any procrastinating behaviours like, oh, I'll just tidy up my desk before I make that call, or I'll just go make myself a cup of coffee before I get stuck into that report. Organising your social life, and any kind of fun, distracting activities that you can sort of do at work, but you really shouldn't because they're not that productive. Now, so this is level 1. Let's move out now and have a look at what level 2 activities might look like. So, level 2, looking for stuff. If we're not very well organised, that can take a huge amount of time out of our day. Attending unimportant or unproductive meetings, chatting with colleagues for more than just a few minutes. Often we get involved in elaborate debriefs of situations with customers, and that can waste an awful lot of time as well. So getting the quick and easy tasks out of the way first may sound like a good idea since it helps to give you a clear desk, so to speak. But the problem with this one though is that it's usually done first thing in the morning when you're at your freshest. And if you're an early starter when no one else is around, that's a waste of uninterrupted time, particularly if you have more heavy duty brain effort tasks to we need concentration, and that's important. So level 3 is where we're starting to move into more effective use of our time, and managers that we work with are often spending a great deal of their time in these sorts of activities. So things like helping people with their emergencies, dealing with those, report writing, there's always a lot of that going on, some micromanaging behaviours, dealing with problems, either our team's problems or other people's, emailing instead of phoning, responding to requests that just appear. There's no planning around that. And unplanned or last minute work that our boss has given us to do as well. We're often very busy at this level and we're lulled into thinking we're doing good stuff, but this is deceptive. The truth is only some of this work is going to get us closer to our goals or KPIs. And this is where we find a lot of stressed managers. They're constantly fielding questions, rolling up their sleeves and diving into the technical detail to help their team solve a problem. Now, if this is familiar, then I would say that it's probably not helping your team long term. They don't need answers from you, they need to find their own. And the more you help them, the more they learn to rely on you. And the price you pay? Staff that are not learning and growing and willing to take on more responsibility. And of course, you become indispensable, which means that you're not promotable. It's a bit of a trap. Now, level 4 is looking a lot more promising. Here's where we're starting to really leverage ourselves and our time. So things like ensuring the right structures and processes and procedures and systems are in place. Continuous improvement activities and tasks. Setting clear priorities for our team and then leaving them to find their way to achieving those. Facilitating the change, that's always part of what we do as managers. Meeting those deadlines, whatever needs to be done, to making sure your team can help meet those deadlines. And preparing for things like meetings, whether it's with other staff, with customers, and so on. So here we have a lot of things going on at our level 4. So here we're starting to do what we're being paid for, which is leveraging ourselves and getting things done through others. Now, level 5 is where we're going to give our maximum leverage factor, and we're going to get things really speeding along when we spend lots of time up here. So some of the activities we might want to be looking at here are anything to do with developing and empowering our staff, whether it's one-on-ones or coaching, giving feedback. Creating an environment through recognition that really boosts employee engagement, so we do get that extra bit from our staff. Building peer relationships in a constructive way, so having those coffees and having those debriefs, but with a clear purpose in mind. Seeking and acting on feedback from all areas. Networking to establish connections with people beyond the narrow confines of our work. Anything that's going to be encouraging us to learn and improve our skills. The best leaders and managers out there are constantly reading and seeking information and learning. And of course, putting time aside to plan rather than running things off the cuff by the seat of our pants. And handling real emergencies. So these are things that we can personally be adding value that others cannot. So those kinds of activities are really going to be pushing us into the level 5 area of productivity. So someone who's highly effective and personally productive will be spending most of their time in activities towards the outer rim and least towards the centre. Now how simple and elegant is that? So let me tell you about Ian, service desk manager in an IT company. This is his story. He's typical of many people we work with. He has a strong work ethic. He's keen to implement some process improvements in his department and increase the level of customer satisfaction by the end of his first year in the role. Now, much of his time is spent in meetings, either with customers, colleagues, staff, and his boss. He also spends up to 5 days every month involved in monthly reporting and budgeting functions. And of course, there's weekly team meetings, and they often get cancelled because of customer issues, or P1s as called in his business. Other activities he does includes one-on-ones with each of his team members, checking rosters, monitoring how the SLAs or service level agreements are going for each customer. He's also very accessible to his team, so he has many on-the-spot short meetings with them to answer specific questions and to help them with problems. A typical open door policy. His analysis of his time log, which was taken over a selection of different days of the week for a month, revealed some surprising findings though. The first thing he noticed was that he was spending far less time with his team than he thought he was, and far more with peers and other more senior managers and external customers. Second thing he discovered was that because he worked long hours, usually from about 8 to 6:30 and often later, then time in the evenings and weekends catching up on emails and reporting, he felt he justified in having downtime during the day, so he surfed the net and took care of some social Facebooking. He was also doing a lot of rescuing of two particular peers. They were inclined to drop things on his team at the last minute and needing them to get things done yesterday because they were less organised than they could have been. One of them was even short-staffed. And the fourth thing that he discovered was that the cost to him was postponed or cancelled time with his own staff, less coaching for them, and his own development had almost permanently been put on hold. So his stress levels were unsustainable and he was enjoying his job less, of course, and it was impacting him outside of work. So we sat down with Ian and spent some time clarifying his key activities in the outer level of his Pireli Wheel. He arranged his other activities into the lower rooms, then scheduled time for things like one-on-ones 3 months ahead, which he refused to postpone unless it was a P1 real emergency. He started to push back on some of the deadlines from his peers and they soon learned to do things themselves or be more organised. He set limits on his time outside of work on emails and reports, and he also redefined how accessible he was to his team. Now they were happy with this because he was now doing more one-on-ones and coaching, which was much better quality use of his time with them. His key lesson from this model, however, was that his role was to get things done through his team and not by his own direct efforts. And this helped him to delegate and let go more. The key question he asked himself when he was faced with a choice about how to spend his time was, which of these activities will get me the most leverage on my wheel so that I can achieve my KPIs quicker? Now, I want to just touch for a moment on balancing your wheel. Just as a car or bike wheel needs the weights on certain places around the rim in order for it to rotate smoothly, you often need to put more time or attention in some areas of the Pireli wheel in order to keep things rolling, particularly out on the level 5 area. For example, if you have a new team, then more time might be spent on getting to know you, setting up job roles, clarifying strengths and agreeing standards than it might perhaps be with a more existing team where your attention may be on longer term planning, gathering information or resources for them. And with a really strong team, you may be spending more time on innovation or continuous improvement or networking with outside groups that can help your team. Now these are all level 5 activities, but they will require differing amounts of time depending on your circumstances. So allocating time evenly around your wheel isn't necessarily ideal, and it also means you can't model your choices on what somebody else is doing with their time. You really do need to assess for yourself what's going to be more effective for you. So I'll leave you with the questions that you can be asking when it comes to decide how to spend your time. So which part of the wheel am I operating in right now would be useful. Will that get me the best leverage for my time? And what should I be doing instead? Now this will take some discipline, but you'll also find that you'll be far more effective and productive if you stick with it. And you're also setting an example for your team and peers. And as you spend more time on level 5, you're also going to be more noticeable to senior managers and therefore more promotable because you're doing what's most valued to the business. So good luck with it, and please let us know how you get on.